Welcome back to another episode of the Life in the Right Layne podcast. We typically, since I feel like our expertise, if you will, is in relationships and godly dating, we typically try to do every other episode about something like a season of singleness or dating or engagement or marriage, something to that extent, because I feel like that's what we were kind of founded on. But then we also like to tie in some other biblical topics. So last week, if you missed it, we had a lot of scripture reference, maybe too much. You can hear me babble on and on about theological things, about deserving good things and what the Lord should give us, shouldn't give us. That was a really interesting conversation. So that was super scripture heavy. And now I think we just kind of want to talk about more experiences in dating. And 2 weeks ago, we talked about top 5 red flags in dating. But also, so those could sabotage your relationship. But also on the flip side, you could also sabotage your relationship. So we kind of wanted to talk about just get out of your head. I think that's what this episode is called. And that encompasses a few different things.
Yeah, it does. You can be the sixth red flag, the sixth flag.
Six Flags.
Six Flags. You're one of them. Surprise. So one of the things that I think might be helpful is starting out with an analogy. Maybe that helps. So
Very helpful.
Picture the home buying process. So you go through and you're buying a home, and one way to do it the responsible way is you go through and you have it checked. The home is checked. You really like the way that the house looks before you buy it, but then you have an inspector come. He checks the house. He comes back to you with a report that says this place is great. Foundation is solid. Everything is built well. You're good to go. You can buy this house. So in your first couple of months living in the house, you see some cracks on the walls. Well, if you're familiar, a crack in the wall can be an indicator of a foundation problem. So the wrong way to approach it would be, well, we're going to sell the house because obviously we made a mistake. There's a crack in the wall. That means there's something wrong with the foundation. Therefore, we got to get out of here. But here's the thing. You did the due diligence. You looked at the foundation of the house. You made sure that it was strong. The crack might be something or it may not be, but don't make decisions too early. Step back, evaluate, because many times cracks in the wall are just on the surface. They don't actually represent anything bad underneath. So this applies to how we date, because we tend to find that when we go into a situation where we've evaluated someone's character, we really think we have a solid person and we start dating them, the smallest thing throws us off, and we, because of past relationships, because of other people's relationships, or just because of our own beliefs that are wrong, you decide, oh, this isn't the right person. I made the mistake of my lifetime. I've got to get out of here. And you don't allow the relationship to mature. You don't allow God to lead you in that relationship. And ultimately, you're in your own head.
That's really good. Can you tell we're in the middle of the home buying process? Nicholas mentioned that analogy earlier today. Since now we're coworkers, we went on a walk and he just thought of it like in that moment, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's a really good analogy. You should say that when we do our podcast.
Right. So the difference from our podcast 2 weeks ago is that if you are the type of person that sees the pretty pictures online and says, I want to buy this house, and you don't do a home inspection, you forego any due diligence, and then you get in the house and you see the cracks and you say, they're probably not a big deal. That would be the red flag conversation, where you did not look at the important things. You haven't looked at the underlying foundation of the person that you're dating, and that will eventually result in a foundation problem, in your relationship tumbling. But what we wanted to talk about today is something that I think many Christians struggle with, because most of us know You need to find a solid Christian spouse. You need to see, are they a believer? Do they follow the Lord? How do they treat other people? We've had some podcasts where we talk about that. Mm-hmm. So why in the world do we get in our own heads?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's human error mainly, and us not heeding the voice of the Holy Spirit and where he's leading, because a lot of times, like you're saying, we have evaluated, we have gone through the process, we've vetted them in a way and made sure that they have solid character. We've asked good questions. They have solid answers. But then we just start overanalyzing, I think. And, I saw this stat the other day, and it was something like the average adult has 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts per day, like in a 24-hour period, which is why it's important to write things down, because our thoughts are so fleeting and they come and go just like our breath. So anyways, thinking of like how many thoughts we have, like it's no wonder we think ourselves out of something. Like it's one thing to talk yourself out of something, but I think oftentimes, especially women, like we think our way out of something good. I know that when we were dating specifically, I immediately had a good feeling about you. My family had a good feeling about you. We had a healthy start. You made very clear at the beginning what your intentions were and where you wanted this to go biblically too, just like a solid foundation from the beginning. And you showed me all your cards. And so I really didn't have to like worry about anything. But at the same time, I still, as things progressed, started overthinking, overanalyzing too much, and just really got in my head and started questioning if this was even the right thing. Like, well, maybe it's just too quick or too soon. Because if you know our story, we got engaged within 3.5 months, but we did know each other before. So it wasn't just like a stranger. But I think it happened so quickly that I started thinking, it's too good to be true, that sort of thing. Like a guy this great doesn't exist. And I could have potentially walked away from what is now a really healthy, strong marriage, all because I let my flesh kind of take over and my mind just went rampant. And I was living in a place of fear of like all these what ifs and not living in a place of confidence in the Lord and trusting that he will lead me to the right person who's best suited for me to take on this earth together and pursue him together. And I wasn't holding on to that. And I could have walked away. I'm glad I didn't. It was really hard, but I stuck it out. And I don't know many people who actually feel 1,000% confident on their wedding day that they're marrying the quote unquote right person, the right one. I'm sure there are many people out there who do feel that, but I was not one of them. I was pretty scared leading up because I don't know. There's always like a little doubt,
I thought I had done everything to calm those fears down. You're telling me now that they were not. Are they calm now?
Yeah, absolutely. But my point is, no matter how much you reassure yourself that this is the right person, I feel like our doubts and our fears still try to creep in, and you just have to say no to that. Like the devil is a liar, and he wants you to get inside your own head and lean on your own understanding and not trust the Lord with your life. And I'm glad that I did that because this is what it resulted in. But,
Yeah, I liked what you said about the fact that we are oftentimes living in a lot of fear. Because we are scared that God would lead us here and then we would make the mistake. And as Christians, we don't need to be living that way because God is going to be with us throughout this entire process. If he brought someone to you to date, he's not just going to abandon you. Mm-hmm. I know people make mistakes with their marriages. Obviously, the divorce rate is now above 50%. So there are a lot of people that are telling the courts that it was a mistake. But I think when it comes to Christians dating, the biggest thing we can do to ensure we have the right person is to trust the Lord and allow him to open our eyes. I think the majority of people who got into a marriage they should not have been in refused to open their eyes. They actually closed their eyes and started to ignore things that they shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And they weren't comparing someone's character and their actions. If your character lines up with your actions, it can be one of two things. It can be good because you are acting in a way that is positive and helpful and you have good character, therefore your actions are good, or it can be bad. And many people see the actions and character separately. The hardest thing to do is to see someone's actions and then compare it to their character that you know so far, and then make a judgment as to what you need to be aware of, but also make a judgment to what is just naturally someone being sinful. Because if someone did that to us and they hyperanalyzed us, they would probably walk away on the first date. So we have to make some sacrifices somewhere. So just like as an example, there are a lot of very bad relationships that start with lies and people that are lying to the other one. Mm. If you are in a relationship where someone is constantly telling you how they are with other people, and then you find out that they're not, and then you find out that they are with other people of the opposite gender, it starts to call a lot of things into question, and rightly so. But when you catch your significant other in a lie and it doesn't align with their character, if it's not something that's happened many times, or you know that deep down they are pushing to be more like Jesus, you need to take it into stride. That doesn't mean get rid of that flag, because there are tiny flags that we can look out for.
Little golf tee flags.
Yeah, like the little flags that go in your sandwich.
Oh, no, I meant
like
actual
the little deli
golf.
Flags. But
like
actual
in the
golf?
hole? Yeah.
Oh, those are big ones. Those are big flags.
Yeah, they're a big pole, but then they're like a tiny flag, aren't they? Like, here's the hole.
Yeah, that can be a tiny flag.
Okay. Well, the sandwiches were better.
The little sandwich flags. I like those. Look out for them, but don't make them a gigantic flag just yet. You need to take it in stride. So address the problem with the person. That's definitely not what we're saying. If you see something in someone that causes you concern because of your background, that's fine. Because most of us have a history where we say, people have always treated me like this, so therefore when my next partner starts to treat me that way, I get very nervous because I know where it has led in the past, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. Most of us have things that we have to get over, and we can talk about that in a second. But the most important thing, once you address it, trust them again. Allow them to have your trust so that they have the opportunity to continue building that relationship. And that will demonstrate their character. Mm-hmm. So if their character is someone who listens to what you have to say, and you can tell they are working to improve themselves, that is a good thing. That's the type of person you want to be with. You don't want to be with someone who either doesn't listen to you when you bring something up, or they listen to you and tell you whatever you want to hear, but then they don't do anything about it. So use that as an opportunity, but don't immediately call it quits and call everything into question immediately, like right then.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I like what you were saying about to trust them again, to give them another chance and see if this is like a common theme with them, or if that was just like a one-time fluke and they didn't mean it, or they didn't realize, or it was a misunderstanding, something along those lines. I think that if we're honest with ourselves and we look back at past relationships, then we would we would say that if we did trust them again, that their true character was revealed. I know people that I've dated, I didn't know that I was giving them another like chance or trusting them again, but that's what I was doing. And I was able to see that that was a continuation of what was going on. And it didn't stop, and it went against what I thought their character was. But the problem with that is I didn't take that as the flag was getting bigger. The flag was rising up the pole. I just kept pushing that under the rug. So it is important to give them another chance, especially if it's early on in dating and you haven't quite figured out their true character yet. But also, when you start to see the same kind of trend happening over and over again, or misunderstandings continue to happen, miscommunication because they are not telling you the full story or whatever it may be, that's when you need to see the red flag for what it is and maybe more seriously evaluate and potentially walk away. But yeah, it's important to not just, put all your eggs in one basket and they do one tiny thing and you throw your hands up and say, well, forget it.
Yeah. Why do you think it's so powerful when someone does something that hurts us so bad that the next person that does something that may appear like that, it like really strikes a chord with us? Why do we always continue the story of our previous relationship onto our next relationship, even though they're getting a new story? They should be getting a new story, but we continue the saga.
The saga continues.
Why do you think we can't stop and say this is a different person?
I don't know. I mean, I think that's a good question. I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, it's probably different for everybody, but obviously how somebody hurt you in a past relationship is going to be a trigger point to what you were saying in a new relationship, because it's still probably a sensitive area because you have been hurt by that specific thing. So when you see similar things in the next person that you're dating, when you're ready and move on and you're dating someone else, I mean, that's kind of like a I don't know, trigger point.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to put it. This is a side note. If you find that you are 7-8 relationships into your dating journey and you continue to find the same things over and over again that are happening to you, you need to evaluate where you are looking for people and also the types of people you're looking at. Because if you went to a bar to find people and you were constantly being let down because they were flirting with other girls, typically the people at bars will be there to flirt. So you pick someone from the start that had that inclination. So that's just a side note.
That's a really good point. Like, if you're looking in the same areas and winding up with similar products, if we want to put it that way, then, just like with your diet or your weight, if you want something to change, something has to change. So maybe, like you're saying, look somewhere else. And also, I think from what I was saying a second ago, I think it's important to note, when people do hurt us in past relationships, it's important to view that as like a stepping stone to get to the next person, and not harboring all of this bitterness and anger and hurt, and truly letting Jesus heal your wounds. Go to him with all of that and make sure that you're completely healed before you move on, or else you may find yourself in the same cycle again because you're not ready. But it's important to not hold on to that hurt, because you may like you were saying, reflect that issue on someone else who may not have that same flaw. And so you're putting characteristics on someone where they aren't deserved,
right?
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I could say that people who maybe have been in a relationship where their partner cheated on them or was up to no good, in their next relationship, they tend to not want their new dating partner to leave and go do things without them. So they tend to be clingier, or they tend to get really upset when there is any other person of the opposite sex in their friend group or area. And I understand that. But as we start to move this towards how do we date as Christians, we need to approach every single relationship, and you're right, as a stepping stone. And remember, it's all an evaluation. This is why we don't want to get too physical and we don't want to get too emotional in a relationship too early, because you start to overlook things. And then if you continue to stay with someone who is going to hurt you badly, then it just damages you even more to continue to be with them. So it becomes very important that you continue judging and evaluating through the whole process and say, God, you are in control. You're in charge. You're the one that's going to open my eyes. Even though I might be the one that is, looking at things, God is going to speak into you. He's going to give you feelings. He's going to give you gut feelings, and you need to pay attention to those. And you need to let him lead your relationship even after you found someone, because he will need to help you keep a sober mind while you're dating. And that's also another great role for friends and family, to be able to observe how you two are interacting. What are some red flags that they see? Because you're not always going to see the full picture.
Yeah, that's good. Side note, you said very physical in a relationship, and I just want to say physical at all in a relationship. Aside from light kissing.
A handshake
and a
is
hug.
okay.
Keep it cordial. Yeah, I like what you were just saying, because getting around family can also help us girls who overanalyze get out of our heads. Because I remember when I was introducing Nicholas to my family, I frantically called them the next day and was like, what do you think of Nicholas? This is when I was like in my head. There was a season where I was in my head, probably like 2 weeks, where I was like, I just don't know, and just spiraling, just thinking like I was so wrong when I wasn't. And anyways, so I was asking, what'd you think of Nicholas? Like, did you see anything that I need to be like aware of? And I was almost like fishing for things, like, tell me what you didn't like about him, because I need to be aware of this and I need to take it into consideration and evaluate him. Like, I want to know what your thoughts are. That's going to help me make a decision, because your family knows you the best. Like, whether you have a great relationship with them or it's kind of rocky, they truly do know you the best. So it's important to get other people's feedback. And I was fishing for something to be wrong with Nicholas, because I just didn't feel good about it. I was all up in my head. And my family had to be the one to be like, no, we actually saw the opposite. We didn't see any red flags with him at all. And that was like shocking to me, because normally they're hypercritical just because I'm the baby and the only girl. So naturally, they want to protect me and make sure that I'm with someone who is really, really solid. And so for them to literally be like, no, we have absolutely no concerns whatsoever. It was the opposite. He was actually really impressive. We think he would be a great fit for you. I mean, that was huge. That spoke volumes to me. And really, reassured my spirit that this was right and that the Lord did bring Nicholas back into my life for this reason and that he wasn't done with our story yet. So it can be a good thing too. It can be not that they weed out the bad ones, but that it reassures you.
It's good to have people that are not emotionally attached, because it's near impossible to get rid of your emotions when you're dating. As much as you might try, this is something that you're going to be very invested in, and that's okay. You want to be. But the goal is to be as aware as possible, seek counsel, and allow God to lead your relationship. He's going to be there through the entire thing, and it doesn't end when you get married. He continues to be with your marriage. And so you have to make him the foundation of your relationship. You have to make sure that you are pursuing him. And then you have to make sure that when you are in the initial stages of evaluating someone, you're not looking for how much fun do we have talking, or is he or she really attractive? You need to be thinking, if I look underneath the surface, if I'm starting to look at how they behave, how they act towards people, what do they believe about God, am I starting to see a strong foundation, or are there still questions? When you start there, then those little cracks that show up, they don't seem so big, because you know it probably is just a small thing. And I know that if I approach this person about it, they're going to be willing to have a conversation with me.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that.
Dating is always going to be challenging. It will always be a process. But we just want to encourage you that God is faithful through it all. We saw him work amazingly in our relationship, and we saw us do the wrong thing and not trust him in previous relationships. So that's always going to be something that we want to share and help people to see there is a way to do this right. And it's usually not the super complicated way. It's the very simple, but maybe the hardest way, which is to trust God and be very, very critical and just be very aware. And critical, not meaning like nitpick someone, but I mean,
yeah, that's what that sounded like.
maybe that was a bad word, but
I like the word evaluate.
Evaluate, it would be a better word there.
Yeah. Be very evaluative.
Vigilant.
Vigilant? Is that a good word?
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think that's good.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully this was helpful to hear the top 5 dating red flags that we shared 2 weeks ago, and then also what to look for within your own self, and helping you not sabotage something that the Lord actually wants to bring into your life to bless you. So get out of your head. I promise you, it's better if you step outside and just let God take control. Let him do his thing. Let him lead you. You have to give that over to him, or else he'll be like, okay, you can do it on your own. Yeah.
And one last thing before we go, it really helps spending time in the Word and time in prayer, because those two things are like a bar of soap to a dirty mind. They just clean it up, and they help you to see very well. Like, you will have so much more clarity and so much more patience and confidence when you spend time with the Lord, because you're reestablishing your connection to him. And that is how you're going to be able to evaluate effectively in your relationship.
One more thing.
Okay.
PSS.
Bonus part 2.
Yes. When you were saying that, and actually I thought of this a minute ago and I just wasn't going to say it, but when you're talking about taking your focus off Jesus and we're not letting him have control, it reminds me of Peter when he's walking out on the water and he lets fear creep into his mind, and he immediately, the moment that he takes his gaze off of Jesus, he begins to sink. He let fear take over and he took his gaze off Jesus. And anyways, I just think about just in our experience, and probably your guys' too listening, when you when you do that, immediately you start to feel like things are falling apart and you have no control and what's going on, I don't even know anymore. And you start to get frantic in your spirit because you're not giving that control to him. You're trying to take it back. Mm-hmm. And he's saying, just release it to me. Just follow me. Keep your eyes on me and I will lead you and I will guide you and I will keep you safe.
Yeah.
So anyways.
That is a great reminder.
That is just what I thought of.
A calm spirit. That's what we're going for.
All right, guys, we'll be back here again next week for another episode. In the meantime, keep living life in the right lane.